The year is 1996. The highest grossing movie is Independence Day, the Macarena is sweeping the nation, and Pokemon has just been born. I also was born this year. I've had this idea since before I ever started this book channel. I wanted to read best-selling books from the year I was born, which was 1996. So I'm gonna be going off of the Goodreads top 10 list. I'm gonna be reading 3 books in this video. I haven't even looked at the list yet. I don't know what books I'm gonna be reading in this video. My first rule is whatever book is in the #1 place, I have to read regardless. Doesn't matter the genre or whatever, it's getting read, non-negotiable. The other 2 I can pick and choose from the list. So I'm really excited to see these books because I've literally been waiting to look at this list for like a year and I've just not been letting myself because I wanted to do it on camera for the video. So here we go. So in 10th place, we have The Green Mile by Stephen King. I watched this movie. I really loved that movie. I don't know if I want to read the book though. In 9th place, we have The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. No way! Okay, this is one that I've been wanting to read for a really long time, so I'm gonna keep that one in mind because that is a definite maybe. 8th place, Fight Club. I didn't know that was a book. Not gonna lie, I had no idea that was a book. That's crazy. 7th place, Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood. I've never heard of that. 6th place, Angela's Ashes. Oh my gosh, I literally saw that in one of the little free libraries I did on video. I'm pretty sure that's like the first video I ever posted on this channel. Okay, in 5th place, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Oh my goodness, that one's also on my TBR. I really like Neil Gaiman. Oh, okay, this is gonna be tough. 4th place, Bridget Jones' Diary. No freaking way. Okay, I love the movie. I think I've seen like 2 of them. I don't know how many there are, but I've never read a book. Honestly, I didn't even realize it's a book, but that makes sense because it's diary. I'm honestly kind of shocked how many of these books that I recognize. I was not expecting that because they're like almost 30 years old. I'm not 30 yet. I got a couple years, like 27 years old. Okay, moving on. 3rd place, The Notebook. What? That came out that long ago? Okay, in 2nd place, Into the Wild. I don't know that one. Now for the moment of truth, the book that I have to read no matter what. Drum roll, please. Dun dun dun. It is no freaking way. Game of Thrones. Oh my gosh. Game of Thrones. The first Game of Thrones book. I have the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. So I actually bought this box set because I wanted to give it away in a little free library. This is not a book that I've ever read before. I have seen the show, love the show, except for the last season. And it's one that I've kind of always had in my mind, like, you know what, one day I should read it. You know, I've heard it's such an incredible fantasy book. Obviously one of the best fantasy books, but it just seems so intimidating. I don't know, it's also just like, it seems like a long book, but also it's not really because it's fantasy and they all are that long. So, I mean, it's non-negotiable. I have to read it. So I guess that this is a good thing because it's finally given me a freaking excuse to read Game of Thrones. So I'm actually kind of excited, honestly. I was not expecting that at all. I had no idea that that came out in 1996. So for the other 2, decisions have to be made. Bridget Jones' Diary. I don't know, I really want to, but also Neverwhere, but also... Okay, I think I'm gonna definitely do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's one of them. One I've been wanting to read for so long. It's between Neverwhere and Bridget Jones' Diary. I don't know, I can't decide! We're going with Bridget Jones' Diary, just because I had no idea it was based on a book, and I haven't watched the movies in so long, so it might be really fun to go back and revisit that story via the book. So I have successfully acquired several things from the bookstore. One of them being this Gengar hoodie. I think is appropriate because 1996 is when Pokemon first came out. I did run into a small issue though. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I did not realize this book was actually first published in 1979. I thought it was 1996. The edition that came out in 1996 is actually a special edition with all of the books in one, which I did see that edition at Barnes & Noble. I ended up getting this one because I still thought I was gonna read the first book. And then when I got home is when I realized it was published so much earlier than 1996. In my mind, it just doesn't really count for me for the video because I really wanted to read books that either came out in 1996 or at least around that time period. So I think I'm gonna be swapping Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for Fight Club. I actually already ordered Fight Club on Amazon. It's coming in soon. Game of Thrones. This is a chunky one though. This is a thick one. Thick with 2 C's. Thick. Sometimes fantasy books that are this long are so intimidating and it makes me not want to read them even though I want to read them. And this is one of them, even though I'm going to be reading it, obviously. I think I'm going to be putting it off until the end though, it doesn't make sense because I'm going to read it anyway. Anyway, that's my logic, which leaves us with Bridget Jones' Diary. Nice and short. I feel like this will be a good start to the video, kind of get us going. This onesie is very cozy, by the way. It also matches my bed here. I guess I am a true 1996 baby. I never put 2 and 2 together. What? The way this book starts out is already really interesting. I will not drink more than 14 alcohol units a week, smoke, waste money on pasta makers, ice cream machines, or other culinary devices, spend more than earn. The list goes on and on and on. I feel like I should read this in a British accent. January, an exceptionally bad start. That was an exceptionally bad British accent. This onesie is like way too big on me and I'm getting body dysmorphia. Stop it. Oh my gosh, this is a bad idea. This was like literally the worst idea I've ever had in my life. So a windy day was probably not the best time to do this, obviously, and I definitely need some sort of like bricks or something to hold the picnic blanket down. But we're having a nice little reading day outside in the yard.
Once again, I found myself on my own and going to my mother's annual turkey curry buffet. Every year she tries to fix me up with some bushy-haired, middle-aged bore.
So I finished Bridget Jones' Diary and I really loved this book, honestly. I saw the movie so long ago that I really didn't remember much of it at all. But the funny thing is I kept imagining Renee Zellweger as Bridget Jones here in my head because she's who plays her in the movie. But it was really fun to kind of re-experience the story via reading it. It was super quick, super fast-paced, very easy to read. It is really interesting because it's written like a diary and you're literally reading excerpts from her diary, kind of like day by day from January all the way to December. So it's literally an entire year in Bridget Jones' life. And at first I was like, wow, is this really going to be entirely a diary? How is that going to be? Are we going to have like a narrative throughout it? And you actually do have a narrative, have a storyline. Like you have some things kind of here and there that are just kind of one-off things, but nothing that feels so out of place that it doesn't make sense. I also really love the character of Bridget Jones. It's weird because it's not in a way that I love other characters. She has a ton of toxic traits. She's super neurotic. She has very poor self-image. You can tell that she struggles with her relationship with food. She does a lot of crash dieting, things like that, like, oh, I gotta lose weight really quick, or, you know, things like she tracks her weight every single diary entry. She tracks how many drinks she has. She tracks how many cigarettes she has, how many calories she's eaten, things like that. So you can kind of see where her mindset is and just like the ebbs and flows of as things happen to her in her life, how it correlates to those factors. And it's not always openly said. Sometimes you kind of read between the lines like, ooh, something kind of crazy happened. Whoa, her drinks went way up, you know, but she also notices that she has certain problems too and wants to fix them, but doesn't really know how to fully address them, so she's kind of doing it in the best way that she can. And honestly, so much of it is just so freaking relatable. Obviously, Bridget Jones is more of an exaggeration of a lot of these things than probably what most people feel, but I feel like a lot of people, specifically women, will relate to a bunch of the things that Bridget Jones goes through, maybe on a lesser extent, but I mean, there's a lot in here, and it's also not just like a cut and dry little fluffy romance. I wouldn't even classify this as a romance book. There is a small subplot of romance, but it's definitely more of a women's fiction type book. I mean, there's a lot of depth and emotion hidden beneath the surface, and I mean, you'll recognize it and be like, whoa, that's really deep, but it's under the guise of such a funny, witty, wacky character. And she's hilarious, but she makes a lot of mistakes, and I really loved it. I was so shocked. I was not expecting it. I thought I would mildly enjoy it, but I did not expect to love it as much as I did. I think in my head, I just thought of Bridget Jones' Diary as just this cute little rom-com, and it is so much more than that. And as for my rating, it's between a 4.25 and a 4.5. I think I might up it to 4.5 just for the sheer fact of the relatability, and also the fact that a book entirely written as a diary was able to keep me so engaged and invested. Love this book, highly recommend. So for my next book of 1996, I am moving on to Fight Club. Oh my gosh, the first line is already crazy. Tyler gets me a job as a waiter. After that, Tyler's pushing a gun in my mouth and saying, the first step to eternal life is you have to die. What? That's wild. Way too bright, my goodness. So I've currently made it 6 chapters into Fight Club, and honestly, it literally feels like a fever dream. Like, this book is pretty crazy so far. Everything is happening so fast to the point where you don't really know what's fully going on, but then you also are kind of knowing what's going on, but then it's like once you kind of get a grasp on what's happening in the scene, it switches and then you're somewhere else. So the thing about Fight Club for me though is that a long time ago, and this is weird because I don't remember when this happened or where fully or what, but a long time ago, like years ago, I want to say I saw on like a YouTube comment on one of our videos on the other channel where we talk about like movies and stuff. I want to say people were talking about something in reference to Fight Club and like comparing the two. And like I can't remember what it was necessarily about. Part of me feels like maybe I might be kind of catching on to things about maybe the potential twist or like what this book is actually about. Like I feel like I might be making connections that I might not supposed to be able to be making yet, just based on what I think I might know. I also don't want to fully say it out loud yet because like I want to be surprised, but I think that I might know where it's going. And also there's no Fight Club yet. So far he's just going to a bunch of these support groups for various diseases which he doesn't have. We might be getting Fight Club. He literally just says, Fight Club is tomorrow and I'm not gonna miss Fight Club. The first rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. That is a very famous line from obviously this book, but the movie in particular, which like I said, I haven't seen, but I feel like everybody knows that quote. This is the first reference to Fight Club that we've actually had in the book though, 6 chapters in. So I am about 12 chapters into Fight Club. I have been listening to it via audiobook. Honestly, reading it has been a little bit difficult for me. I think it's just because it is like such a stream of consciousness, but like in a very chaotic way. Like you read it and then it like switches scenes and then all of a sudden it's like you're doing something else and like a bunch of things are happening and then it like switches again and you're like kind of confused on what's going on, but like also you can follow it, and there's just like a lot going on. And something about listening to the audiobook, I think my brain is processing it easier than actually reading it. It is making me very curious what the movie will look like because it is just so chaotic, you know? Like I'm wondering, did they take liberties in the movie to kind of like make it a little bit more of a streamlined, cohesive story that you could watch, or did they just like keep it like crazy like that? I could see it going either way. I just got to a part in particular involving soap. So if you know what I'm talking about, you probably know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that was gross. I don't really find myself wanting to like run back to listen to the audiobook or like run back to read the book, which usually I do when I'm like super invested in a book. Like I think I'm reading like a couple different books right now, which is crazy for me. I don't typically read a bunch of books at once, but it is nice to have like another book to go to as almost like a reprieve from Fight Club, which to me isn't really a great sign, because like when I really love a book, I kind of want to just like get so invested in it and like that's what I want to read, because I do read for leisure, like I read for fun. Okay, so I am actually kind of almost done with Fight Club, a little over halfway done. I am on chapter 21. And I hate to say it, but this book has kind of put me in a little bit of a reading slump. I don't feel like it's fully this book's fault, but I do think that this book kind of set it off for me. I've had to put it down several times to go try to read other stuff just to kind of get back into the groove of reading, because I hadn't really been wanting to. I haven't really been finding a lot of books that are keeping my interest, but I do want to finish Fight Club right here, right now, because I'm kind of ready to be done with this book. The feelings I have for this book are so weird, because I don't think it's bad. I actually think there's probably a lot of intelligence all throughout this book, and if you actually really thought about things and looked at things through a very hyper analytical lens, you would probably see a lot of connections and see a lot of things, and just, you know, there's definitely like a commentary going on in here. But the writing style and just like, I guess, the voice in the book, it is so fast-paced and chaotic, and it is kind of hard to keep track. And I think that's the point, because the person you're reading about, they're very like in their head, and they're dealing with a lot of mental health stuff, and just a lot is going on in their life, and I feel like they don't really have everything straight in their head. So as the reader, you don't have everything straight that you're reading about in their head. It's just really chaotic, and I could honestly see a lot of people really loving this book, but I just don't think that this is the type of book I necessarily want to read just for entertainment. And it could also be because I'm in the midst of a reading slump, so I'm just really looking for something that's just going to immerse me and is easy to read and just like really draw me into the story. And in this one, I'm just not really feeling that, because it feels like it's taking a lot of effort to read. And while it's taking a lot of effort on my part, I'm also still not fully understanding everything. I'm pretty sure that's intentional, unless I'm just stupid. Upon further reading, I feel like I'm kind of picking up on the twist. And I don't know if I would have known that if I wouldn't have already had a slight inclination of what it could potentially even be. You know, it's one of those things, like, I feel like I'll never know. I'll never know if I would have picked it up on my own, or if I was kind of influenced beforehand to potentially know this. I guess we'll just have to keep reading and see. And I'm pretty sure we just got the reveal, and I was right. What? What is that ending? I have officially finished Fight Club, which is so crazy that I have been kind of paused on this book for so long when I could have just finished it. Honestly, the ending was really great. I think now, seeing the whole picture, seeing it now from beginning to end, seeing where the story went, I understand it a lot more. And then also reading the afterword, the author talks about the writing style and how it was meant to be that way. Like, it started as a short story he was writing, and he was like, oh, there has to be a way to write a story where you're giving the reader tidbits of information, like just the core pivotal moments, but not taking them along scene by scene, which is exactly what I said was bothering me about this book earlier, but it was all intentional. And you know, that's still not my favorite style of writing. Like, I kind of do prefer more structured stories, but I can appreciate what the author was trying to do, and that he did something different, and that the way he did it still culminated into such an incredible ending, even though I kind of saw it coming and I kind of had a feeling that's what was going to happen in the story. I really wish I wouldn't have known though, because I think the reveal would have been so much crazier to me and been like a jaw-dropping moment. I think it was kind of interesting that the book actually got less chaotic after the reveal, after things started making sense. I'm not gonna go into spoilers or anything, but I think that was intentional, you know? And there was actually a moment at the end there, I literally started tearing up, which is so crazy, because this book, I started it and it literally put me in a reading slump, and then I finished it and I kind of like it. Like, I am so shocked. It's so crazy. I went from probably thinking this was gonna end up being like maybe a 2-star book based on the ending alone, it's getting bumped up to a 4. At least a 3.75. So I am about 36% of the way through Game of Thrones, which is kind of a lot considering this book is 800 pages long. And I have been so pleasantly surprised how much fun it has been to read Game of Thrones. His writing is actually pretty easy to read, but it's also not simply written. Like, it is still elegant, I guess, but in a very easy to read and understand way. I do think though that already having seen the show has enhanced my experience a lot actually, but it kind of felt like when you watch a show and then years go by and in your mind you're like, oh, I really love that show. One day I want to go back and rewatch it. Like, you remember the big things about it and how you feel about it, but you don't remember every little detail throughout. And then you go back and rewatch it and it's like you're re-experiencing it for the first time again, but also not really because you already know you love it and like you're seeing things that you forgot and it's cool again. That's how it's been feeling reading this book. Like, I'm not re-watching the show, I'm re-experiencing the story in another format, and it has just been such a cool experience. There is something about this world and this story that just speaks to me, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with how great of an author George R.R. Martin is, and I totally understand the hype around him, but until you actually read his writing for yourself and see how he structured the story, the way he was able to create this entire world with its own history and lore, it just makes it feel like it's a real place almost, which obviously it's like a fantasy world and there's fantasy elements, but it's just so rich in culture and history. I've also already cried twice while listening to the audiobook, so there's that. I have also already gone back and started rewatching the show. I told myself I wasn't gonna do this until I finished the book, but I couldn't help myself. But having the context of how old some of these characters actually were in the story, it kind of puts a lot of things more into perspective. Like, I think Jon Snow was only 14 in the beginning, Bran was like 7, Daenerys was only 13, which is crazy if you know about Daenerys' story, but also seeing the little tidbits that I know happens probably in books after this one, honestly, but like seeing little things that are getting hinted at early on, and like you could tell they're there for a reason. Oh, it's just like, it's making my heart swoon, I guess. It's just so exciting. I like literally have chills after reading like the last sentence. Oh my gosh. I just can't believe I finally finished it. Like, that is so wild. Ugh, man, this was so good. Honestly, so good. And I can't tell if I would feel the same way if I didn't already know the source material or not. I feel like I would though. It flows very well and it's still really easy to read while still sounding very sophisticated, which I love. I love his writing style so much, and he is just such a great author. I could see why this took the world by storm in 1996, and then it took the world by storm again when the show came out. If you love fantasy and you have not dove into the world of Game of Thrones yet, I 100,000,000,000% recommend it. So out of these 3 books, I think it'd be fun to kind of rank them. Fight Club for sure is probably in 3rd place. I had such a strange experience reading Fight Club because at first it literally put me in a reading slump for a very long time, and it was difficult to get out of that reading slump, and it was probably gonna be like a 2-star, and then something happened towards the ending of the book that bumped it up to a 4-star for me in the moment. After stewing on it for a while, I feel like realistically it's probably a 3.75 star. This is hard because these are really close. In 2nd place, it's gonna be Bridget Jones' Diary. It was very good. I would recommend this book to anybody who really wants kind of like a rom-com, literary fiction type book. And I don't think that you're meant to think that she's a healthy character or necessarily fully in her right mind. You know, you're seeing a flawed individual and her innermost thoughts, and you're seeing kind of her on good days and her on bad days, and she's also so freaking funny and hilarious, and it just felt so real and raw and relatable at times. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I definitely want to continue with this series. So that brings me to my #1 book of this video, A Game of Thrones. Oh, my heart. I loved the show, but reading the book has just given me a new level of fan status. I love this world and I love these characters and I love George R.R. Martin as an author. It's such a crazy feeling from going from already being a pretty big fan of something to like kicking it into next level. But reading this book has definitely done that. There was so many moments I cried throughout this. My heart was just being ripped out, and just so many emotional moments throughout. So many beautiful quotes, inspirational quotes, so many great characters. It's so hard to pick a favorite. In the book, strictly the book speaking, my favorite is probably Tyrion. Daenerys is a close second, but I think she gets better probably as the story goes on. Jon Snow too, I know he becomes one of my favorites probably later in the story. In this book, he definitely was still kind of young and figuring things out, but I mean, you can see all the potential there for a lot of these characters too. I think knowing kind of where the story does eventually go just from the show has made me kind of see the foreshadowing and see things that are getting set up, and that made me so excited and giddy. I definitely will finish the series, well, as much as I can, because he hasn't written the next 2 books yet. I definitely will be reading the rest of these books at some point. This was a fun video. It was fun to explore some of these books from the year I was born. I know there was a lot of other ones as well, but these are just the ones that I picked. And let me know if y'all like this video. Leave a comment down below, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.